myself a little bit. Dan and Amy here.
What? You're crying too? Huh?
I mean, it's
just
just
like Uncle Joe.
You didn't know. Oh, you. There's a lot to get to here. The confirmation hearings for Trump nominees for cabinet positions have been fascinating. Fascinating discussions prompted by the Democrats. So thanks so much for that. I had no idea how important climate change science was to the incoming CIA director. I had no idea how important a discussion on blind trusts was to the incoming HUD director. I had no idea how central LGBT issues were to the incoming Secretary of Defense. So it's been really enlightening. But before we even get to that, I just want to make sure I understand something with President Obama's announcement, one of his midnight edicts. I just want to make sure I understand something. So when Russia lauds Trump, that's bad, and Trump is Putin's Manchurian candidate. And when Cuba lauds Obama, that's good, and Obama's a humanitarian. I just want to make sure I understand that correctly. And to help us try and crack these codes, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Jed Babbin, former Undersecretary at Department of Defense, also a contributor to the American Spectator and the Washington Times. Jed, thanks so much for joining us. Can you help me with that riddle? Is that about right with Cuba versus Russia and the two principles?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's absolutely right. And it's the way the left sees it. You know, anytime you get praised by a dictator in a semi-communist or, Russian satellite sort of state, then absolutely, it's a great thing. And, you get Raul Castro praising Obama and, John Kerry going down there to suck up to him. That's all to the good. It's all peace and love and understanding. But, if anybody praises Trump, anybody, for any reason, heck, for Theresa May to come out and say, hey, this might be a good guy we can work with. Oh, my God, that's terrible, and it's a sign of war and strife and everything else that goes with it. You're right, but what's the surprise? It's just the same old, same old.
Well, I'm sure you feel like me, and you saw the Obama policy change that asylum seekers from repressive communist Cuba will be returned. That's the one Central American group of refugees that will be returned to their home country. And you thought the same thing I thought, which is, oh, gosh, it's just too bad Hugo Chavez isn't alive to see this. It would be a nice moment.
Sure.
Yeah, nice moment.
Nicolas Maduro is still there in Venezuela. He's just as good. They're pretty much the same thing. But, it's all the same. It's always the same. And what we really learned this week is that Trump has a bunch of guys in the cabinet who are going to be pretty strong and really not entirely, giving in to him whatever he says. In fact, they're going to. And, they're basically going to disagree with him whenever they need to.
Right. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what I've learned this week, that they're not on the same page on issue after issue. You've got, Mattis yesterday saying Russia is a threat to NATO, that the U.S. should honor Iran nuclear deals and recognize Tel Aviv as the capital of Israel. And that's in sharp contrast than what Donald Trump has been saying and what he's been campaigning on.
Well, yeah, and, some of these things are going to have to go the way the president-elect wants when he gets into office. These guys are going to have to either smile, salute, smartly and just salute and say, yeah, boss, I'll do what you want. I don't think it's the right thing, but I'll do what you want, or they're going to have to resign. And Mr. Trump, I think, is a strong enough guy to deal with it in either way. So we'll just have to see. Mattis went very far. Pompeo went very far. Mm-hmm. They both said that we're not going to do any torturing anymore. We're not going to waterboard no matter what the president says. Russia, according to both Mattis and Tillerson, is an adversary, and it can at best be an ad hoc ally of some sort at some point, but it's not going to ever be a real friend. And that, again, is different from what Trump is saying. So, you've got people there who are strong, who are not going to just agree with the president and say, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir, like you've had for the past 8 years. Obama has had a cabinet full of yes men. They've done just what he tells them and nothing else. And this is going to be a different cabinet. It's going to be a very good change because it'll be stronger because these guys are not scared to disagree with the president-elect.
Yeah, but that's precisely right, which is why the reporting on it is so comical, because it's dissension in the ranks. No, these are people who are accomplished and, as you say, Jed, strong enough to articulate their position and defend it and advocate for it. And ultimately, it will be the president's decision in many of these realms. Some it won't be. It will be more complicated than that. But I thought that was the point, is you want talented people around you, and then you charge them with going to do their job running this department or that agency.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is the whole idea. And, I think Trump is doing a pretty good job of that, at least from what we saw in these cabinet hearings. Jeff Sessions, who I think is going to be an absolutely fabulous attorney general, defended himself against all this BS about him being a racist and so on and so forth. But, he is out there to administer justice, not to apply politics in place of it. So, that's where we have a strong enough guy in the AG slot. And, anybody who thinks that Mattis and Tillerson aren't really strong guys, they've got a big message coming.
Yeah, I believe, Mattis. I thought he should have opened yesterday with I come in peace, but if any of you frack with me, I'll kill you all. I thought that would have kind of set a nice tone.
Well, I think probably the guys who were preparing him, he probably wanted to say that.
Yeah.
I think the guys preparing him for the testimony probably said, you might want to tone that down a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Don't you think Pompeo and Mattis both, struck a very tough line on Russia and their role in our election?
They did. And I think that was a good thing for both of them to do. I think the jury is still out about what happened and what effect it actually had. I mean, the real point that I need to make and you need to make is that all it shows is that we need to do a much better job of protecting our election process. And we've got a big message right now. We've got 2 years to do it in terms of between now and 2018. And, let's get on with it. Let's get ready and do the protections we need.
Do you have any concerns about the role of various members of the Trump family in the administration? Jared Kushner, Ivanka, other siblings of Ivanka's. Any concern there?
Well, no. I look back to what John F. Kennedy did. I mean, he made his little brother the attorney general, and you joked about it, saying, well, he needed to learn how to practice law.
There you go. So, sure.
It doesn't bother me. I think there are going to be bumps in the road. Obviously, there are. I mean, there's never anything, you can always expect bumps in the road when any family gets together in any respect. That's kind of the way it goes. We're human beings. But I don't think there's going to be any problems. And I think, with Melania staying in New York to make sure that the young man, Barron, I guess his name is, finishes school, I think that's a good thing. I think, she's doing what she needs to do, and Ivanka can come in and, smile prettily and act like the first lady. I mean, I think it's going to be great.
And President Obama, or soon-to-be former President Obama, he's going to be staying in Washington, D.C. Is that going to be a strange dichotomy then between, because normally when you're done with the presidency, you move out of town or go back to your home state, but he's not doing that in this case.
Amy, you hit on one of the biggest things that's going to be going on in the next 4 years. Obama, he doesn't want to be forgotten, so he's not going away. And when you look at it, he's going to be like this president in exile. He's going to be speaking on behalf of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. You're going to see interviews with him almost every day on television. He's going to be writing op-eds, everything to trash Trump. And, if he had any sense of history or any sense of the obligations, the post-presidential obligations of the presidency, if he had any idea of those things, he would go home to Chicago and just shut up for a while.
Well, why do we have to take him back?
He's not getting rid of his house
but the media is going to force it on us.
Well,
That's the way it is.
But the good news for you, Jed, is that you guys still can catch up for coffee in D.C., so you'll have time.
I don't think I'm on his Christmas card list, so I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you another question. Yesterday, Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, strange bedfellow somewhat, authored a co-resolution to defund the United Nations unless and until they essentially rescind the resolution that was passed against Israeli settlements. What's your take on the United Nations and that resolution that was co-authored by those two senators?
Well, my take on the United Nations is expressed in my book, Inside the Asylum, which I recommend to all the listeners. Look it up on Amazon and go buy the darn thing.
Yeah.
But the basic bottom line is the UN is a media circus to benefit the despots and dictators and rogues and terrorists of the world. And they proved it again with that particular resolution. It was shameful for Obama to not veto it. And I think, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, anything that those guys can agree on can't be too bad. So,
Okay.
I think that we really ought to have that passed and signed by the president. I don't know if it'll get all the way through there, but I think defunding the United Nations, even for a year, we pay something like, we pay 22% of their budget, which is $3 or $4 billion, and we pay another $3 or $4 billion on top of that as so-called voluntary donations to a lot of UN councils and yada, 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 and activities. We pay about $8 billion a year. How about let's just say, you guys have a nice day. We'll see you next year, and maybe we'll refund you at that point, but maybe not. That's the kind of thing that we need to do. The UN has been a disaster for us for many, many, many years. And I'm not just talking about for our allies, too. But, the fact of the matter is when in a weak moment, for example, Harry Truman agreed to have the French on the Security Council to veto pretty much everything we want to do. Russia, China, Britain, us, and France. In the Security Council, you have 5 permanent members. The thing is a disaster. It is passing resolutions that are contrary to our national interests. I could go on and on and on. You can look at the UN bureaucracy. There's thousands of people who work for the UN. They get paid, I think, roughly 30% more than even American federal government workers who, by the way, get paid more than the going rate in the free economy. These guys are sitting there fat, dumb, and happy. They're wasting our money, and we need to really just kick them in the tail really, really hard.
He is Judd Babbin, former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, also a contributor to American Spectator and Washington Times. The book, Inside the Asylum. Go buy it on Amazon already. Judd Babbin, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. We'll do it again soon.
Eddie joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.